Hi, this is viewer discretion is advised about my suicide story. I don't know. I'll be saying a couple four-letter words, and this is not suitable for kids. So, thank you so much for watching, and viewer discretion is advised. Y'all have a nice evening. Bye.
I always thought everything was going well with my marriage, and you know, I guess I was wrong, and things kind of took a turn for the south of it, and my wife was cheating on me with some guy that I thought was my best friend that I've known my whole life. It just, it all started in the last weekend of August. I ended up waking up and seeing them make out and right in front of me in our house. But back it up a little bit more, I'd invite my friend over, just to have friends over. And back uh, back then, he was going through a hard time. He ended up breaking up with his wife, and his wife ended up moving on to someone else. And when his wife ended up leaving him, she ended up taking his boy, and they both moved to a different state. And you know, what am I supposed to do with a friend that I've known just about my whole life? Do I let him stay at home and at his parents' house and just hurt by himself, or do I invite him over and try to make him feel better and just help him out in a time of need? So I invite my friend, I'll call him Craig, and I would invite my friend Craig over, just to kick it. Sometimes we'd be drinking. I'm not that much of a drinker. I don't even drink that much. I wouldn't want him to drive home drunk, so he would stay the night. And this happened like throughout the whole summer of 2013. Until one time, I had a long day this one Saturday, the last Saturday of August. I kind of remember that. And I had a really long day. We were doing a lot of stuff. Chores and errands, running errands, and I guess I got tired towards the end of the night, and everybody ended up starting to drink. We were having a barbecue in the backyard, and so I just we all ended up going inside and watching a movie, and I don't know, I was the first one to crash out, I guess, and we ended up watching I forgot what movie it was. Something Atlas with Tom Hanks. You probably know. I can't think of it right now, but we ended up watching that, and I fell asleep. And when I woke up, it was close to like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And that's when I ended up waking up, but I just played it off like I was still asleep, and my eyes were slit open. and they were talking to each other in a way that I would not think about it. And now that I think about it, it was kind of messed up that they would be doing something like that right in front of me and me and my ex-wife's house, you know. And eventually they ended up starting to just make out right in front of me. My mind was just racing all over the place. I didn't know what to think. I just sat there in disbelief. Just as I sat there, they ended up finishing off making out, and she ended up tapping me on the knee and said, "Hey, it's time to go to bed." So from the living room, it just connected right to our bedroom. It was a really weird layout in the house that we had. It's kind of a square layout, but our master bedroom was connected right to the living room that we had, and we ended up getting into the bedroom, and we shut the door. And right as we shut the door, I turned on the light and I asked my ex-wife, I don't even know what to call her. There's so many four-letter words, but I would like to call her, but I'll just give her a name of, well, just call her Beth. And I just wondered, I was just like asking Beth, what the hell was that? And she answered me like she was just dumbfounded, like she didn't know what was going on. And I asked her, what was that? I asked her, you just got done making out with Craig. And she says, it is what it is. And I just, at that time, I didn't know what to think. I was just losing my mind. Because at that time, a little bit of a backstory, I was in a fight to get my son back. And my son, it was like an on and off relationship. I had the last time I saw him was when he was 2 years old, and then his mom took him away, and then I got reconnected with him when he was 8. And then I was able to have a place for him to stay, and he had his own room, and he was happy to be over there with me. But when he stayed at his mom's house, one time he ended up coming over to our house, and we were ready to take off. We're taking off somewhere, and he came all dirty shirt and pants, and we were going. Oh, that's right. We were going to my cousin's baby shower. Now my cousin's baby's probably about 10 years old now. She's a big girl now that I see in the pictures. But anyways, I told him to take a shower, and when he went to go take a shower, I was over there inside, and he took off his shirt, and he had these big old bruises. And this was back in like a year prior to all this happening. he ended up having all these bruises, and I ended up going and calling CPS. I didn't want his mom telling me that I was abusing my son. So I ended up calling CPS, and they ended up doing a whole report and a whole investigation that lasted a whole year, and we kept on going back and forth with court and to speed everything up in August of 2013. I ended up going to court. Me and his mom never showed up, but a judge ended up getting me full custody of him, and he could still go to his mom's house on the weekends. I never wanted to take him away from his mom. But when that happened, he was still staying with his mom, and actually he was staying with us, and I'd drop him off at school in the morning and then pick him up after work. And at that time I started working at a Del Taco part-time just to get out of the house. And my daughter, she was staying at a daycare, and my ex-wife would pick her up after she'd get off of work, and we'd all meet up at the house. Sometimes I'd just stay at home, work, and take care of my daughter, and I'd take my son to school, and I thought I finally had my son with me. My mind was going all over the place. That's where I had my son with me, and when this thing happened with my ex-wife and my former friend, it felt like everything was falling apart. Everything that I wanted fell apart. Now, back to where I was. When I got done talking to Beth, I told her I had to leave. I had to go somewhere. I just could not stay there. I told her either he had to go or I had to go. And so she told me he can't go. He's been drinking too much, and so he can't drive. I'm like, that's fine. So I ended up just getting the car keys and taking off. By this time, it's like 4:30. I think 5. The sun's like kind of like starting to come up. I think it was still dark. And I was like trying to call anybody that would pick up the phone. And on a Sunday morning, nobody's going to pick up. And I was calling my sister. I remember just calling my sister, and ended up like she didn't pick up. But I ended up going back to her house where she was staying at the time, and I just parked in the driveway and fell asleep. I was like so exhausted, and I told her what was going on, and she couldn't believe it, and she ended up inviting me over inside, and I was telling her everything, what was going on. My wife was cheating on me with my former best friend, and that I had my son over there, and she didn't know what to do or what to say, and she was trying to think of words, and I thank her so much. I thank my sister for being there. But after a while, we had coffee, and then I took off. By that time, it was probably about 6 or 7, and then I ended up calling another of my friends, and he ended up picking up. Sean. So Sean picked up the phone, and he was like asking me what's going on, and I kind of briefly told him what was going on, and he said, come over. And from my house, I went to his house, and we ended up just playing video games in his living room for a little while and watching TV. And I was kind of like riled up a little bit again and just telling him what was going on. And he still couldn't believe it either, you know. How could something like that go and happen? And so he ended up letting me crash out there for a little bit longer, and I was waking up like around 9 or 10, I think. Excuse me. His mama ended up waking me up because she was making breakfast, and so she ended up offering me a breakfast. And so Sean was asking me, what am I gonna do? Where am I gonna go next? And I didn't know where to go. I was telling him I'm probably just gonna go back home. I don't know what's gonna happen there. And while we were having breakfast, I ended up getting a call from Beth. Or she ended up texting me. She was texting me, where am I at? And I ended up telling her that I was at Sean's house, and I was just chilling with him for a little while. And she was asking me what time I was going to come back, and I told her I was going to come back when I'm done eating breakfast and hanging out with him. So we kind of had plans on going to church that Sunday, because we'd go to church, and her brother-in-law was the pastor of the church that we went to. And so we ended up, actually, I think I ended up just going by myself. And yeah, I ended up going by myself, and I asked her, are you going to go to church? And she told me no. She ended up staying, and we got the kids ready. She got my daughter ready, and I told my son to get ready. And that's when we went to church and sat through the sermon throughout the whole thing. And at the end, I started having a nervous breakdown. Started crying and thinking about when we got married. Her brother-in-law was the one that married us. And he ended up taking me to his chambers, or his office in the chapel, the church that he was preaching at. And he ended up sending me up for an appointment to Community Bridges. And so they ended up taking my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law ended up taking the kids, and my ex-wife ended up picking them up later on. I don't know what happened, but from there, from the church, I ended up going home, and they told me to get some clothes and get something comfortable and go over there to Community Bridges. That's where I ended up spending I think about a week there with observation. When you first get there, you end up getting placed in one of these big old lazy boy kind of chairs, and they feed you ham sandwiches, and you just watch TV. And I stayed there for about a week, and your lazy boy chair kind of turns into a bed too, and so you just stay there. And by that time, I ended up they ended up just giving me some meds and try to see if I get some counseling. And so I went there and I got a little bit of help. And once they released me, I went back home. And when I went back home, I stayed at home by myself. Beth ended up taking our daughter, and my son ended up going back to his mom's house. And so I stayed at the house a couple days and just kept on looking all around everything that we've worked for, everything that we've had. All the stuff that we've been through, how we started out, and many things just kept on racing through my head, and our relationship, and I didn't know what to really expect, what to think. My whole world was crumbling down, and was trying to find ways to make our relationship better, and I'd stay up all night till 3 or 4 in the morning, wondering what did I do wrong, what could I do to make things right. And at that time I was just so depressed. I didn't even want to do jewelry at all. That's when I started turning to smoking a lot of marijuana, a lot of weed. Smoking it and just numbing out some of that pain. Just going to work and coming home to an empty house. Beth ended up coming back home like 4 or 5 days later. But on that note, I'm going to end that chapter right there. When she came back home, and we're just there. That was probably like by the middle of September, I think. when that happened. Oh no. See, when I think about it, actually, I don't even want to end this chapter yet right now, because that's when things kind of get fumbled. I had my daughter for a little while, and I was able to pick her up, and I stayed in the house until like October. Then that's the beginning of October. That's kind of like when I got kicked out, and I'm like going back and forth a little bit, but my mind just kind of rethinks things how it happened. And I remember when Beth came back home. That was probably like in the late September, and she and my daughter ended up sleeping in our bedroom, and our sleeping arrangements were that I was gonna sleep in our daughter's bedroom, and that lasted only one night. Laid in my bed, in my daughter's bed, just looking at the ceiling, thinking how my life was going downhill. Now I'm losing everything. At that moment, I felt like ending my life. I was gonna go to my workshop, and I made a noose and started smoking a little bit more, and I just wanted this pain to be over with. So I chilled in my workshop, and I made a noose, and then there was like this beam in our driveway in the carport, and is up like the roof to our house had a beam that covered the driveway, and I ended up using that, and I ended up standing on the trunk or the bumper of our car with that noose on my neck. And I just texted her. I don't know why I texted Beth, and I told her, don't come outside, but just call the police and just don't come outside. And right when I was like about to jump right off that bumper, that's when she came out and she saw me, and I was hanging there for about, I think, must have been like 5 seconds, but it felt like forever. She pushed me back onto the bumper. My feet got a holding of it. And that's when I got down. She got me down, and sorry, had to take a quick sip of my soda. But when I got down, that's when she called the police, and then I told her don't call the police, and I ended up taking off. I told her I just had to go, and I was gonna go to one of my friend's house. I didn't know where to, and so she ended up calling the police, and they ended up catching me down the street at a Circle K. They pulled me over, and they pulled me over in a Circle K, and that's when they ended up taking me, and they ended up taking me to this place in Phoenix, UPC, I think. I stayed there for a couple days, and then they ended up moving me to this place in Mesa called Desert Vista. And I stayed there for almost a month. It was like 15 or 20 days. By that time, it was October. And I ended up getting released from there. And once I got released from there, they said, you need to have somebody pick you up. And I ended up calling my ex-wife, and she ended up giving me a quick message, and she told me just don't say nothing, just listen. And she told me she ended up packing all my stuff into one of our cars, and she said, don't worry about the locks, they've been changed, don't worry about the password, everything's been changed. And I got to my place. I ended up calling my sister, and my older sister, she's the one that ended up giving me a ride. And when I got there, and so I called my baby sister, and she ended up picking me up, and she gave me a ride to the house. And I guess my ex-wife ended up leaving the keys to the car in the mailbox, and I had a pair of my keys still with the property that I had with me, my wallet and my keys and phone. And when I got home, I tried to go into the house, and lo and behold, all the locks were changed. And everything was changed. I ended up getting seen my little dog, my mini pin that I love so much, Peaches. She was barking her head off, and we had a gate that kind of went to the side door, and there was a lock on that door, or on that side door, and she really didn't want me to go back in there. And my sister, my baby sister, ended up leaving me. I told her she could go, and she asked me where I was going to go, and I was like, I'll figure it out. I don't know where I'm going to go, but I'll figure it out. So I ended up leaving the house that I once called home, and I ended up just driving around for a while. It's kind of like around 3 or 4 when I got released from the hospital. My sister picked me up, and just kept on just driving around, and I had about $400 that I got from my paycheck, and that's all I had in my pocket. And I was in the car, I was sleeping in my car, and I guess that's kind of like where I want to leave this chapter. And yeah, but stay tuned. Pretty soon, I'll actually be shooting the next chapter of this story tomorrow. If not, yeah, I'll shoot it in the shoot it. But yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope you guys have a good night.